Sanjeev.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. The Snoopgate Saga involving Apple phones of certain opposition leaders in the country has now got a new twist today. The BJP claimed that one of the NGOs that was mentioned in that Apple notification, which alerted the potential hack victims, the hack targets as they were, to get in touch with a group. One of the groups that was named in that threat notification was Access Now. Access Now is a George Soros funded NGO which has tentacles across the world. So far, we have not heard from Apple directly on whether they have a legitimate tie-up with Access Now. What is the nature of that tie-up? Why are they in cahoots with a George Soros funded NGO? And what exactly does Access Now do for potential hack victims, as was the case with some of these opposition leaders? Or was this notification itself some kind of a mischief played by a Soros-linked entity? So is this a valid claim by the BJP, or is the BJP simply using all of this bogey of Soros and Access Now to divert from the central issue, and that is that all of these opposition leaders were victims of a state-sponsored attack, and they say that state-sponsored attack was at the behest of the BJP NDA government at the center. But first, the story.
Look into the credentials of Access Now. It is a George Soros funded entity. Connect the dots and you will find that the players behind Pegasus are the same players who are now claiming that they are being snooped on in the Apple saga.
This is the most convoluted nonsense that I've heard. Maybe in the past decade, since this story about hacking of telephones and then hacking of mobile apps actually became a threat.
All right, so first let's take a look at what is it that the BJP is claiming and how are they making this Soros connection. Now, number one, the claim is that Soros is the reason behind this threat notification by Apple. The second claim is that there is a George Soros funded non-profit organization called Access Now, which is mentioned in that threat notification in the last paragraph, the threat notification that was sent by Apple. There is a follow-up email that's been sent by Apple to all the potential victims of this hack, which explicitly mentions in the last paragraph, asks them to get in touch with this NGO called Access Now, which is linked to George Soros. He's one of the big funders to Access Now. In addition, the funding is also for the organization's digital security helpline. That is something that is also mentioned in this email and this message alert that was sent to these targets. And claim number 5 by the BJP is that it's not just Apple or this threat alert, but that Access Now has a network that is operating in India against the Modi government. And the claim number 6 is that some opposition leaders also have links with George Soros. They particularly cited Rahul Gandhi as having met with, in the past, individuals who are directly or indirectly linked with George Soros. But it didn't stop there. In fact, the BJP's Amit Malviya went on to further claim that the Congress party's link with Soros-funded Access Now. This is what he tweeted. And I'm going to read out our Motorola tweet of the day.
Hello, Moto.
All right, Mr. Malviya has gone on to say that the Congress Access Now link deepens further. Other than George Soros' Open Society Foundation, Access Now website lists Omidyar. Now, Omidyar is also a prominent donor. It funds media organizations, among other things, here in India and around the world. Along with Omidyar, there is Ford Foundation, Global Affairs, which is the government of Canada, and government of Germany as other contributors. Apple, incidentally, is not one of their major sponsors. One would wonder, what is the Congress link with Omidyar, the other prominent donor? He goes on to say, Mr. Malviya, in that tweet, Bharat Pandey, who leads Omidyar's initiative, was special advisor to Jairam Ramesh when he was rural development minister in the Congress's government, and now he manages the Congress's communication cell. Does it get any more murkier than this? The Congress is evidently leaning on everyone from George Soros to Omidyar to muddy the public discourse in a bid to undermine India's democracy. So, this is the BJP's claim. Like I said, you can or cannot take this at face value, but this is a claim that's been made basis one of the paragraphs in this threat notification that's been sent to many of these opposition leaders. Now, if there really is a Soros link, and that is a matter of investigation that has to be established, if there indeed is, then here is why that is problematic. Now, not long ago, he was surrounded by many controversies here in India. There was a war of words that broke out when Rahul Gandhi met with Sunita Vishwanath, who is a close aide of Soros, working for the Soros organization for Afghan women, allegedly receiving funds from Soros-funded entities. Soros's NGO, Open Society Foundation, and its vice president, Salil Shetty, was one of the people who walked with Rahul Gandhi. This happened in October last year during the Bharat Jodo Yatra in the Karnataka leg. George Soros in 2020 had announced a plan to set up a $1 billion fund to fight some of these strongmen nationalist governments, including the Modi government here in Delhi. Amid the storm over the CAA back in 2020, Soros had said that the biggest and most frightening setback to open societies comes from India, where a democratically elected Modi is creating a Hindu nationalist state. India had been watching out for Soros and his organization, the Open Society Foundation, and it was even put on a watch list by the Home Ministry in the year 2016. So that brings us to our debate topic tonight. Soros in the Snoopgate. Is it BJP's claim, and is the claim valid, or is that simply a diversionary tactic from the meat of the matter, and that is someone was snooping on these leaders, some state-sponsored attack was due on these leaders. Who was behind that attack?
Hello, Moto.
All right, joining us now on the talking point this evening, Basuri Swaraj is spokesperson of the BJP, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, spokesperson of the Congress Party, Apar Gupta is an advocate, and Arvind Gupta is head and co-founder of Digital India Foundation. Let me start with Basuri Swaraj. The BJP has been making these claims, Mr. Malviya, other spokespersons and leaders in your party have been making this claim that Access Now, which is mentioned in this threat notification, is linked to George Soros. This entire thing was orchestrated, funded by George Soros. On what basis are you making that claim?
I think before I answer that, let me just get into the heart of the meat of the matter itself. So, Jaka, as you know, this is going to turn out to be another Pegasus 2.0. You know, even 2021, the opposition had accused the BJP of snooping, and a Supreme Court investigative committee was set up. And what was found by the Supreme Court was that not a single opposition device had the Pegasus software. In fact, there might have been traces of certain malware which can be attributed to the internet browser history of the opposition, which made them susceptible to cyber attacks. Now, similarly, if you remember, yesterday, when this particular alert sent, I have with me a document which I've downloaded from the Apple support. So this is the company document, because the opposition, I know, that keeps on, sometimes they rely on what Apple alerts are, but then they say that Apple has not issued any clarification. And before I answer on Soros, this is very important. The last line of the company document says, detecting such attacks relies on threat intelligence signals that are often imperfect and incomplete. It's possible that some Apple threat notifications may be false alarms, and this is Apple's document. This is easily available on their website. This is it's about Apple threat notifications and protecting against state-sponsored attacks. Now, answering the questions on George Soros. See, it is very well known that Soros has been trying to undermine Indian democracy, and his hatred and his dissent qua the Modi government is very, very obvious. The statement made by Mr. Amit Malviya today, which you even read out, the fact that there is not only Soros connection, but there is also the Omidyar connection of funding. All of these are very, very serious allegations. They're not merely hogwash. The government of India is extremely serious about security protocols as well as privacy. And therefore, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, the Honorable Union Minister, has already said that the Indian government is going to go to the bottom of it and is going to investigate. They have even asked Apple to join the investigation with all the relevant material.
Okay.
What Mr. Malviya has said today is also something very serious that needs to be investigated on this particular aspect. It is not just that Apple sent out these alerts to the opposition leaders in India. 150 countries, individuals from 150 countries received these alerts. But once again, if you remember, and I know this reporting was from your channel itself, Apple's statement was that Apple does not attribute the threat notification to any specific state-sponsored attacker, which means this alert was not based either on the identity of the attacker or on the source of the attack.
Okay, so let me ask Mohan Kumaramangalam and let me walk up to the wall. Mohan Kumaramangalam, the contention is this. Forget about George Soros or any other entity. Why should Apple, which is the world's leading phone manufacturer, have to depend on an NGO for its tech support? This is a technical problem. Many of these MPs have received a tech notification from Apple saying you are potentially going to be the victim of a state-sponsored attack. Please explain to our viewers, how can an NGO be the go-to for the world's most premier technology company for a tech problem on their platform, on their devices?
Zaka, first, I don't think Apple is outsourced its tech support, and I think you're making a leap of faith there based on one assumption made by Mr. Amit Malviya, who put it out there. Let me say that this isn't the first threat notification that Apple has actually sent out. Apple and Google both sent a similar threat notification back in 2021, right after Apple actually sued Pegasus, sued NSO, the maker of Pegasus, for what happened and the exposure that the Apple devices had to take when the Pegasus scandal broke out. It instituted this mechanism of threat notifications. Now, when you're sending threat notifications, there is a certain threshold, I imagine, that Apple would use to actually send these out. Otherwise, you would be creating on a much more regular basis. You would have to imagine that Apple saw something here which made it send this particular notification out, considering the last one they sent was 2 years ago. Now, obviously, you cannot, with a 100% definitive way, say that this particular threat has come from someplace. But, Masuri very elegantly read out one part of the sentence and left the other one out, where Apple says that it's because state-sponsored hacks are incredibly sophisticated and hard to detect. That is why they can't be sure and they can't actually talk about the source of the attack. She also talked a lot about Pegasus. She actually said this is Pegasus 2.0. I agree with her. Just like in Pegasus 1.0, where she just chose to say that the Supreme Court said that there was no Pegasus on devices, one of the things that the Supreme Court did not do, even though the justices presiding said in open court that they would like to do, is release the detailed report, the investigative report, because there are dissenters in that report, one of whom actually came out, I think it was Arvind Narayanan, who came out and said that for the journalist phones, 2 journalist phones that he examined, he found that there were Pegasus on them. And you need an independent third party like Amnesty Labs or, international safety cybersecurity organizations to look at the methodology followed in that particular report. For some reason, the report was never made public. Until date, we don't have a definitive answer. Let me also say that any tech product which is designed to do snooping or which is designed to be intrusive will never be able to be detected with 100% because they pride themselves on the fact that they don't leave any digital signature when they're conducting this.
But you still haven't answered the question I asked, which is, why would the world's biggest phone manufacturing company, tech company, outsource its tech support to an NGO? But be that as it may, let me go to, just give me 1 second, Mohan, because, one second, let me go to Arvind Gupta, because, he's got limited time on the debate tonight. So, Arvind Gupta, the fundamental issue is here. I don't think most people care whether Soros is linked or XYZ is linked. The point is, were these opposition members the victims of a state-sponsored attack or not? And B, there is one very basic question that all of them are asking is, why is it that 95% of them happen to be from the opposition? Even in the case of Pegasus, I think about 170, 175 people were quote-unquote allegedly snooped upon, including union ministers, people in government, people who have nothing to do with politics as well. But in this case, it's by and large only opposition leaders. Why is that? Isn't that suspicious is the question they're asking. Arvind Gupta.
Well, let me start by saying, I've had the pleasure of working with Apple very closely in the past, and Apple doesn't outsource these activities so easily and does not disclose how it, does this threat intelligence in the current scenario that we are in today. But I'll make some 4 or 5 points. The opposition leaders also have to explain why they have been so casual with their own cybersecurity. I know one of them has gone on record saying that she, casually shared her login ID and password with I don't know how many people. You have to understand, Jacob, that there is this originates from, it could originate from anywhere. If you have traveled to a suspicious territory, you remember the times you used to travel outside, credit cards used in certain countries, you would get an alert the moment you returned back. So origination of this system, and that is what Apple has to really participate, and the union minister has already talked about, that they have to come and say whether this originated, what was the timing it originated in. But they're probably setting out this new threat intelligence system, and they saw some suspicious activities. Maybe their login IDs are being done from India, from outside India, from Middle East, and many places else in a very short period of time. They have some malware that is installed. There is a bunch of things that go into threat intelligence like this. And as Mohan rightly said, I mean, this is a very sophisticated process. Neither Mr. Mohan or anybody else actually knows what goes on behind for Apple to make this judgment and send it out. But I personally feel that there is, India, 2% of people probably give or take use Apple phones, 98% use Android. And these security mechanisms do send out constant alerts. Here, I think the MPs have a little bit of blame on themselves. They've been, in some of the MPs at least, have been very casual with the approach that they've been sharing their passwords. 2, there is a lot of definition that is involved. State-sponsored, there is a lot of extraterrestrial actors today which behave like state bodies, and they're very, very sophisticated in the way they operate. So we have to
Arvind, I come back to the question that I asked you as well as to Mohan. How does any of this explain why a Soros-funded NGO is part of that last paragraph of this threat notification?
And that is the suspect part, because I also checked the last 2 years of donations that and the funding that Access now has received. I don't see a mention of Apple there. So that is a clarification Apple will have to give. But I did see a lot of money coming, and at least a lot of bulk of the money coming in from OSF, which you have talked liberally on this show already, from Omidyar and from Ford Foundation, by the way. And these are not lovers of democracy in our country. So I think there is a question mark there. I cannot point out whether they have a role or not.
Okay.
That's for Apple to clarify. But there is definitely a very casual approach to cybersecurity that some of these people have had, and it's probably a result of that, or a combination of travel and using phones in troubled geographies in a very short span of time.
Apar Gupta is also joining us. Apar, explain this to our viewers in layman terms. Is this because there were some, SMSs or some WhatsApp forwards that these MPs and leaders clicked on that led to this malware attack on their phones? Or is it, as Arvind Gupta said, they possibly traveled to dangerous territories in the last few months and therefore they have this? But again, none of this explains, Apar Gupta, how they could have been potential victims of a quote-unquote state-sponsored hack attack. And what that state is has also not been defined by Apple. It could be the Indian state, it could be the Chinese state, it could be the Pakistani state. Who knows?
So, Zaka, for my response, I'll first just like to take the viewers very simply with what has happened, because they may not have context. They must be just tuning into this broadcast. The first thing which has happened is people who own iPhones and these happen to be members of parliament who are primarily from the opposition, have gotten a specific alert from Apple. This is not a general advisory, and I'm making this clear because yesterday in the press statement by Minister Vaishnav, he stated it is an advisory. It is not an advisory. It is an alert. It has been sent to specific people. This alert by itself links to a help page. That help page provides in great detail that they immediately need to put their iPhones into what is called as lockdown mode. So this is a serious notification. This is not something which can be passed off as something which is clicking on a link just casually, or some third party private vendor which is trying to get into it. And in fact, it becomes very clear when you read the text itself, because it starts with the first sentence: alert, state sponsored attackers may be attacking your phone. And here, throughout the notification, if you look at the help section again, it then goes on to state that they cannot reasonably state which is this state-sponsored attacker. And secondly, as much as it may be a false flag, they are not technically sure who has done this or what has done this. They are not going to provide further details.
What's then the access now connection?
Now let me answer, Zaka, because you've been asking everyone, why is this? Apple is a company which is primarily making profit on the basis of sales of these phones and availability of them in jurisdictions in which it needs to also maintain privacy. It's balancing this. It's balancing it in large markets like China as well as in India. And the possibility of the Indian government being involved in it is certainly something no foreign corporate entity will take a risk on. This is a very reasonable thing to do. Secondly, I'd just like to state two things with respect to the Pegasus hearings. The first thing is the Pegasus case is still pending. The second is that the government till date has not clearly stated in Pegasus, and neither has it stated in this instance. Okay. It has not procured spyware or used it. If you see the tweets of Minister Vaishnav, he is not saying clearly, we have not done this. And the investigation needs to include the cabinet secretary as well as members of the government, because this is not a technical investigation. It needs to be queried. Has the government actually used it? You get your answer. If they put it in affidavit, yes, we did it, or no, we did not. But this question has not been asked and not been answered even to the Supreme Court of India.
All right. I am also joined by Sanjeev Sanyal, former member in the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He was one of the first prominent people on Twitter to point this out. Thanks very much, Mr. Sanyal, for speaking with us. I want to first ask you, and a lot of Twitter users have asked you this as well. You're not a tech expert. Why were you so curious in getting to the back of this whole Access Now business? And what is Access Now's connection, if at all? There has to be a connection to Apple for you to say that this is some part of some sinister plan that the opposition leaders thought of, and so on and so forth. But first, explain what got you curious about this.
Well, you're right. I'm not a technology expert in any way, so I have brought out questions that have nothing to do with the technology. So you can ask the others about the technology. I'm just asking some common sense questions. So first of all, if you will permit me, I'll give you a list of things that look entirely weird. First of all, when the alert goes out, it states in a very strange language that you have been attacked essentially because you are a person either doing something important or because of the things that you do. Now, this is not the kind of language that a technology company says. I mean, it's got, why should it care who you are and what you do as being a case for an attack? It should only care about whether or not it sold a product and it's getting attacked or not. Secondly, it then says that if you have a problem, you need to speak to experts. It doesn't say go and talk to so-and-so person in our technology support team. It does not give any link to anything in Apple. Now, this is almost like Maruti, if you have a breakdown, saying that, if you have a breakdown in your car, go and please talk to a good mechanic. No, it will always say, please contact so-and-so person in Maruti. So instead, what it does, even more weird, is that it goes ahead and then it states that, look, not only are we not going to connect you to any experts in our world, we are going to connect you, and they give a link to a NGO, which is not a technology NGO, it's actually an advocacy group, which is politically linked to all kinds of things and is funded, by the way, by Soros. It's funded by Omidyar, by the Canadian government of all things, and Ford Foundation. And so this is the people who are funding an agency which is outside of Apple. And according to this
No, but
alert,
Sanjeev,
people should go and
one second.
contact this agency.
One
Why?
second. No, no. When you say it takes you to the page of this NGO for whatever support you require, are you asking questions of Apple or are you asking questions of the people to whom this threat notification was sent?
I am making some very simple, common sense observations. Apple should perhaps answer this in the first instance, because the notifications came from something that seemed to be coming from a Apple source. Now, if it is an impersonation, then in which case Apple should state it's an impersonation, which it has not done.
Yeah.
If it is not an impersonation, then Apple should state to us why is it that a technology company has outsourced its security features to a non-technology NGO funded by all these other groups.
No, so speakers in the earlier part of the program, their contention was this is not tech support that's been outsourced. This is the nature of the work of the individuals who've been targeted. If they need support, then contact
So
access now is what their claim is.
No, this is clever by half. Because remember, it's all right for a tech company to outsource, say, fact checking. That's not a core activity
Yep.
But on the other hand, security is a core activity. I mean, come on, the security of the OS system is surely something of serious importance to Apple, and it can't possibly be outsourcing it. And if it is, then it should come out and say that, look, we have outsourced tech support to somebody else. This is tech support. If your phone is getting hacked by somebody, supposedly a state, it could be any state, but anyway, let's say it is a state. Then it's a serious business. But at no point in time did they say anything about how they're going to support it. So no, please go to this NGO to help you. You've got to be kidding me.
Okay, well, let me get one final word from you before I go back to the panel. What then explains, neither is Apple an investor in this access now, nor is Mr. Soros an investor in Apple. So what then explains the linkages?
I have no idea. I'm just asking common sense questions. Surely Apple is, at least in the first instance, does not seem to be one of the funders of Access Now. It is all these other agencies, Soros, Omidyar, Ford Foundation, Canadian government, German government, by the way, as well. None of this information, by the way, is difficult to get. I mean, I only got into this because I looked while sipping my morning coffee at this issue and just went to Access Now website and began, following various leads. And I thought, I was quite surprised that nobody else was raising this issue. So I tweeted about it and raised it.
All right. We'll see what comes of it. Thank you very much, Sanjeev Sanyal. Let me go back to the panel on this one. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, it does seem quite odd that you have an NGO that is partly taking care of what is the fallout of a tech attack on some of these individuals who have come out and said that Apple has sent them this threat notification. B, the fact that NGO seemingly has connections to a person who has openly in the past said that the Narendra Modi government in Delhi is a problem, that it is anti-democracy and so on. Something's not surely adding up here. I mean, and as you said, Apple is the world's largest technology company. It prides itself on the safety of its products. Why would they, trust the safety of its products or leave the safety of its products to some unknown, NGO that's funded by a billionaire who clearly has political affiliations?
I mean, Zaka, this is really something that Apple has to answer, but I'm really confused by Sanjeev's comments. So, is the assertion we're making here that Apple didn't actually send out that message? Or is it that they sent out that message but mentioned some advocacy NGO that maybe people could turn to for advocacy rights, I assume, and we have a problem with the way they're handling this? What is our exact problem? Are we doubting the fact that this message was sent at all? And then BJP's assertion that George Soros funds it, so therefore Congress party is involved in it because George Soros is Rahul Gandhi, is what they've been saying all day, is then the assertion that We made Apple send this message out so we could create this bogey. Do you see how convoluted this logic is? It's just making no sense to me why we're even debating it.
Basri Suraj, what then is the contention? Is the BJP saying this whole thing was fictitious, that the members of parliament who claimed that they got this threat notification from Apple, they cooked this whole thing up? Or Access Now was sending some kind of impersonation on behalf of Apple? What is the contention that you're making? Because you're the only ones who are making this connection: George Soros, Access Now, and Apple threat notification.
The contention is that all aspects need to be investigated. I'll just respond to what Mohanji said. Mohanji said that it is a sophisticated attack. That doesn't make it automatically a state-sponsored attack, that too a Modi government-sponsored attack. In fact, especially when it is, and I'm quoting Apple's words, the threat intelligence is often imperfect, incomplete, and perhaps sometimes even false alarms, which is what Mr. Apar Gupta also said on your panel. Which means that everything needs to be investigated. Whether it is the aspect of George Soros funding Access Now, which is the tech support in this particular case, or Umidyar's role, or it is the role of Apple sending these alerts to the alleged opposition leaders. Every aspect needs to be investigated, and look at the commitment of the Modi government about security protocols and about privacy. The Honorable Minister came on record yesterday itself and set up a technical investigation on this particular aspect. So Apple needs to join with all the relevant material, and then, of course, we can get to the bottom of it.
Okay, I'll give the final word to Apar Gupta. Again, what is confusing for our viewers, Apar, is the world's biggest technology company has sent out this threat notification. No one is, doubting the genuineness of the threat notification. Yes, Apple did send this to some of the individuals concerned, but why is the help that these people have been requested to take linking them to an NGO which, as the BJP is claiming, has dubious linkages?
So, Zaka, I provided a part of that answer in my first response. I'll just like to focus on what happens now and next. I think when you asked also Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal pointed questions, he said, I don't know, quote unquote, I'm just asking questions. So I don't know what they're floating here. Let me just focus on this inquiry which is happening. Okay, now this is a technical inquiry which has been set up under the Computer Emergency Response Team, which is actually reporting to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The allegation here is opposition leaders have been hacked or attempted to be hacked by the government of India. Now, the appointments, salaries, entitlements of these officers in certain is determined by the minister in charge. The minister, Mr. Vaishnav, yesterday in a press conference calls these allegations frivolous, which is prejudicing this investigation. Now, I want to just ask, how can this be an impartial investigation? This is limited, and it is not also under the Commissions of Inquiry Act. I think the only proper recourse is an independent, transparent investigation which focuses on not only examination of the phones.
No, but who is going to do that transparent, independent investigation?
Not only examination of Apple.
You did the Pegasus investigation by Supreme Court appointed technical committee.
Yes,
what came of it?
Yes, but there's
what
no
came of
report.
it? Nothing came of it.
No, the case is pending. The report has not yet been released.
The order said that the 29 phones were examined and none of it had Pegasus spyware.
Yes, and the government did not cooperate.
Yes, they said that as well. Yes, absolutely.
In which, so all I want to say is that if the government, I'm not saying the court, I'm saying if the government by itself is serious, as Minister Vaishnav says, they will also summon the cabinet secretary as well as other arms of the government for clear answers. Okay. After all, they have nothing to hide and they can clearly state they have not procured spyware or used it on the opposition.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests. We'll see how the story plays out, both in the political realm and, of course, in the legal/investigation realm. Let's shift focus now here on Brass Tacks to the other big story, and it's been something that has been roiling that region. The entire world has been following this in close attention, what's been going on between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Up next, I'll be speaking to Nathan Sachs. He is one of the world's leading experts on Middle East affairs from the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. He'll be joining me right on the other side of this quick break, and I'll be asking him what next in this war. How is it and where is it headed to?
Hello, Moto.
also reported AQI levels over 400 to 500. So this is a worrisome situation now. In fact, authorities have also kicked in to actually curb this situation. As of now, various measures have been implemented. The latest which has been implemented as of now by the government is that no diesel vehicles will be allowed, or diesel buses will be allowed from the adjoining state in the national capital. If the buses are electric, if the buses are CNG, or if the buses are compliant with the BS6 norms of the diesel vehicles, then only those buses will be allowed. In fact, other measures are also in place, but as of now, the situation looks very bad here in the national capital. With national capital reeling under heavy smog, there are certain pockets which are reporting AQI in the worrying category of 400 to 500. In fact, I'm coming to you from the Anand Vihar area right now, which continues to be worst affected here in the national capital. In fact, yesterday only this particular area reported an AQI level of over 500. Right now also the AQI continues to hover somewhere around 420 levels here at Anand Vihar. Every year this is said to be one of the hotspots of pollution here in the national capital. One of the prime reasons when we talk about air pollution in the national capital continues to be the farm fires. But vehicular movement is also another aspect to it. You can see the kind of traffic this area caters to, and in fact not only traffic, but you can see the bus adda is also here at this very point. So there is a heavy vehicular movement of big vehicles, though an imposition has come into place where diesel buses from the adjoining states are not being allowed to enter to the national capital. Only electric, CNG and BS6 compliance diesel vehicles or buses will be allowed here in the national capital. In fact, there is a visual also coming in here how water guns and smoke guns are being continuously used to actually make a temporary solution of this entire situation. Though at this very pocket, in this very area, the AQI remains in the very, very poor category. In fact, it is going beyond that at some point in time. Yesterday was the day when 500 mark was breached here at Anand Vihar. In fact, Supreme Court is also taking up this issue of worsening air quality here in the national capital, where the Supreme Court has asked the 5 states, including national capital Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana and Punjab, to file an affidavit as to what measures they are taking to combat this current situation of worsening air quality here in the national capital. Well, the people of the national capital woke up to a hazy morning for the straight 5th day. Well, the air quality was already deteriorating, but now things have gone from bad to worse. In fact, today's AQI is, as when we are recording this very report, is somewhere around 336 levels, which is in the very poor category. I'm coming to you from the Kartavya Path area. On this side, you can see how bad the situation is here in the national capital. The smog has completely shrouded this area, and India Gate from this very point is barely visible. So this is a visual evidence of how the bad situation has turned here in the national.
It's been more than 3 weeks now since this war began between Israel and Hamas. This is, of course, in the aftermath of the October 7 terror attacks carried out by Hamas, the deadliest on Israeli soil, over 1,000 Israelis dead. And even today, 3 weeks plus on, there are over 200 hostages in the custody of Hamas. In response, Israel has gone on an aerial bombardment spree, and now, starting earlier this week, there's been a limited ground operation. In Gaza, the Palestinian Health Ministry there says more than 8,000 Gazans have died. A large number of them happen to be women and children. Where is this story headed? Are we looking at a full-scale war, a full-scale ground invasion? Could this potentially spread into a wider regional conflict involving Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and who knows, Syria and Egypt and other Arab players as well? Or will it be contained to a war between Israel and Hamas? What is Israel's objective? When they say they want to finish Hamas, how realistic is that? Can Hamas actually be finished? Or can it be rendered to a position where it cannot even fathom carrying out the kind of attack that it did on the 7th of October. Joining me now is one of the most eminent voices in Middle East policy. He's the director at the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution, Mr. Nathan Sachs. Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First things first, what is your assessment? It's going to be almost a month now, later this week, since this war began. What is your understanding of where things stand as of today? Today we got the news of Israel attacking the largest refugee camp in Gaza, in Jabalia. The Palestinians are saying dozens are killed in that, including some of the hostages who were held. What is your best understanding of how things stand on the ground right now?
Well, unfortunately, we're probably looking at a very long campaign. It's already going towards a month, but I would not be surprised if it goes far longer than that. This is not merely a retaliation by Israel. This is an operation to try and prevent the status quo that existed before. October 7th, the massacre of October 7th, the worst terrorist attack per capita, at least, in many, many decades, is one that Israel cannot live with. And this operation, extremely bloody for civilians in the Gaza Strip, is again not just a retaliation, it's an attempt to go after Hamas. Now, you asked very well, can Hamas be destroyed? Of course, the answer is Hamas cannot be completely destroyed. But an aim that Israel may go after, we don't know yet if that's the decision, is to try and degrade Hamas capacity in the Gaza Strip such that it cannot govern the Gaza Strip and can never mount another attack from the Strip itself. It will not disappear. It will still exist. It will still attack Israelis from the West Bank, perhaps the Gaza Strip too. But the status quo ante that existed until October 7th, that's one that Israel is intent on preventing from returning.
When October 7th happened and we were all, watching in utter horror the kind of scenes that played out, the fact that women and children were killed and grandmothers were being kidnapped, clearly world opinion was on Israel's side because they were seen as the victims of this horrific terror attack. But now in response, over the last three and a half weeks, the response has been so overwhelming, some would say disproportionate. The number of people who have died far exceeds the number of Israeli victims. Do you reckon how much of a window, how much of a leeway does Israel have till it achieves this objective? Because that moral high ground, if you will, which it had in the aftermath of the terror strike on the 7th of October, that seems to be fast dissipating.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, a lot of the focus tends to go away from the civilian toll, and the civilian toll is extremely important. But there's a flip side to that. Counting the dead on both sides does not tell you who the victim and who the perpetrator is. Obviously, innocent civilians in Gaza, and there are 2 million civilians in Gaza, are innocent of any of this, but they also happen to be where Hamas is dug in. The answer to this would, in theory, be rather simple. Hamas would not need to surrender to Israel. It would simply need to transfer the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority, and it would be over. There would be no blockade, Egyptian or Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip, and no settlements, of course, in the Gaza Strip. In the current reality, where Hamas is dug in so severely with hundreds of kilometers dug underneath the Gaza Strip, this operation will not be an easy one. In normal times, your very important question would have meant that Israel has very limited time. But given the trauma of October 7th, I tend to think Israel will be relatively immune, or at least oblivious to a lot of the criticism from abroad, where its position and the position of many Israeli citizens is, you all are calling for a ceasefire, that's understandable, but please explain to us who prevents this in the future. If the answer is simply Israel should live with the reality that existed before and do better on its intelligence, prevent it somehow by itself, that's an answer Israelis have lost patience for. So I say this, and I think it's tragic. This conflict may last for quite a while, even though you are correct that public opinion in much of the world has turned on Israel and will continue to do so. Israel is the stronger side, and as a result, fighting especially against a guerrilla organization like Hamas, dug into an urban territory. The casualties on the Palestinian side are very severe and will get worse. And so we're probably going to see even more of that reaction abroad. Nonetheless, I don't think Israel is stopping without at least significant elements of its objective being achieved. I don't know if it will topple Hamas completely, but it will certainly hurt Hamas, as it's trying to do even in Jabalia today with the very heavy toll that we saw.
You did mention that, this could get over tomorrow if Hamas just handed over power, handed over control to the Palestinian Authority. How easy or difficult would that be? Because it's not like the Palestinian Authority is exactly a very popular outfit, neither in the West Bank nor in Gaza? And also, why would Gazan people support an authority or a political formation in which it has no faith, in which there are grave corruption allegations against senior leadership there, and they have tried time and time again to make peace with Israel? They have failed. As far as ordinary Gazans are concerned, the PA is perhaps a bigger failure than Hamas is.
Well, the PA is certainly in very dire straits, both in terms of its legitimacy, its corruption, its governance, many other things, but nonetheless it is far, far from Hamas, not only in what it does to Israelis, but what it does to Palestinians living under it. If the Palestinian Authority were in charge in the Gaza Strip, I'm sure life would be very far from normal or reasonable, and of course after these last 16 years, it will take a very, very long time for anything to come back to normalcy in the Gaza Strip. But nonetheless, you would not have an Egyptian or Israeli blockade of the Strip, you would not have any Israeli settlements, which are no longer there since 2005, and you would not have an Israel trying to stop a terrorist organization on its doorstep that is even today firing rockets again and again at Israeli civilians. That would be a huge difference. It would allow life to continue to some kind of normalcy. It is true that the Palestinian Authority has failed in many respects, including in reaching peace with Israel, but life under the Palestinian Authority is not the same as life under Hamas, not only because of what they do to their civilians, but because of the war with Israel. Hamas is intent on fighting a far superior, stronger country right next door to it. The Palestinian Authority, at least so far, has preferred not to in recent years. That would mean a completely different life. We would not see the scenes we see today. But I want to be clear. The chances of Hamas simply handing over to the Palestinian Authority are zero. Hamas has no intention of doing so. It tells you a lot about Hamas, of course. It is the same Hamas that does not allow civilians into these hundreds of miles of kilometers as bomb shelters. They do not serve as shelters. They serve only as staging grounds for Hamas itself to fight the Israelis. So I'm very sorry to say the prospects are very dim. Hamas is not going to agree to that. We're probably going to see a continuation of this military operation. It may end with some kind of diplomacy. We may see freeing of hostages through diplomacy. There are efforts on that. I very much hope it succeeds. But I do not believe Israel will live with the status quo ante that existed until October 6th. That is one that ordinary Israelis and their leadership is simply not willing to countenance.
How real are the prospects or the fears that this could become a wider regional conflict? We're already seeing Hezbollah, firing rockets into northern Israel. We've seen some of the Houthi rebels trying to fire rockets from the Yemen side. There is chatter about Syria and some Syrian terrorists also getting involved. How worried should the world be, and America in particular, that this could, the tentacles of this war or the theaters of this war could spread from just Gaza?
We should be extremely worried about that. In the United States, the administration here is focused keenly on just that issue. America has moved 2 aircraft carrier warrior groups to the region, one in the Red Sea and one in the Mediterranean, and other forces have been deployed, not only by Americans, but by British and others. The main fear here is Hezbollah, first and foremost. It is far more strong, far more powerful than Hamas is. It is already fighting Israel right now in numerous incidents along the border, but it has not yet joined the fight with its massive arsenal of dozens of thousands at least of rockets and perhaps some precision missiles that could target all of Israel. That would be a game changer, a very different war, and one that I would say would be enormously damaging not only to Israel, far more than Hamas, but also to Lebanon, which has been reeling from political and economic crises, quite unprecedented crises in recent years, and could now see a terrible, terrible event if that happened. As you said, the Houthis are already involved, and there is serious concern that the backers of both the Houthis and Hezbollah, Iran perhaps could get involved. Their modus operandi is usually to work via others, not to expose themselves to the damage. But clearly, both the United States, other Western allies, and of course Israel are keenly watching this. I would say more. In terms of the international community, there are 2 main policy objectives I think that should be on the top mind of everyone. One is, how does one change the status quo that existed before this with a minimum civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip and in Israel? And second, and very, very important, how does one prevent and deter Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others from getting involved even more seriously in the future? That would spell a very different kind of conflict, and as I said, a very damaging one.
All right, and one final word. You know, it's not like the world already was not confronted with one war. That war is still ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. No one expected that to last this long. It's going to be 2 years in February since it began. But if I were to sort of ask you to, take the story forward, do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, if you will, by summer of next year, what do you see the situation like in Gaza? What are we envisaging there? Is it Israeli troops occupying the ground for a period of time? Is it that, as you said, Hamas is replaced by either the Palestinian Authority or some other entity? And then there is, of course, this plan, which I'm sure you've seen, a leaked Israeli intelligence plan, which talks about moving the entire 2 million plus people there out into the Sinai. What are we looking at as far as this region is concerned, let's say 6 months from now?
So first I want to make clear, that leaked document is not from really Israeli intelligence. It's from a ministry called the Ministry of Intelligence that is in charge of no intelligence whatsoever. It's a ministry that was created for political reasons and is not involved in any way in intelligence or security. So I would completely disregard that. The possibility of mass displacement is not in the cards, except of course we're already seeing mass displacement of internally displaced people inside the Gaza Strip as part of the war, and 300,000 Israeli internally displaced people as a part of the war as well. But we could see, unfortunately, an Israeli occupation of some sort in the Gaza Strip. We may see an attempt by Israel and others to bring international forces to try and stabilize the situation. But I would not rule out another possibility, and that is that we're seeing a prolonged, hopefully lower level, but prolonged conflict with remnants of Hamas still in charge in parts of the Gaza Strip, but certainly in the south, but maybe elsewhere, and a war of attrition of sorts where Israel tries to target the leadership and the operatives, especially those who were involved in October 7th, but without a clear conclusion. So by the summer, we may be in the day after, perhaps some Israeli occupation, perhaps an attempt through an international or Arab force to lead eventually to the Palestinian Authority entering. But there's also the danger that we're simply seeing a slow, low-level, perhaps, continuation of this war that would be very bloody, very difficult, certainly for the people of Gaza, but also for Israelis who are under fire as well right now with rockets from the Gaza Strip. All this in the context, of course, of world crises and the war in Ukraine. I wish I had better news. I do not, in this crystal ball that I'm professionally obligated not to look at, I do not see much good news coming anytime soon.
All right, Nathan Sachs, thank you very much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Thank you for your insights and your time.
Thank you.
On the surface, it looks like an ordinary office building, but it's what lies beneath that makes this facility one of a kind.
You can't really live without blood, and there's no artificial blood.
Just outside of Tel Aviv, nearly 50 feet below ground, lies what is believed to be the world's only shielded underground blood bank.
All the blood comes here, and we process it.
Israel's entire blood supply is processed and tested here at the Marcus National Blood Services Center, operated by Israel's Magen David Adom.
The whole idea of this place is because we built it in a shelter. So we are now actually in a shelter, anti-conventional.
Deep below the ground.
Yes.
Because this presumably would be a major target for Israel's enemies.
Absolutely. And we were very concerned about the people who work and the blood, of course, the blood inventory. So in a case of siren now, or rockets attack, we are all protected. It's a shelter.
The organization actually moved into the building on October 9th, just days after the Hamas terror attacks. It is now more vital than ever in a country at war.
We distribute the blood to all the hospitals and to the army. When we evacuate a patient, either the civilian or the military ambulances or helicopters, they get blood on the way to the hospital already, provided by us.
There are 3 levels underground, each level more secure than the next, and all designed to operate even if there is a direct attack. On the first level, they sort, label, and test the blood.
So we are now in the testing laboratory, which we call the Mega Lab. The idea is that we put all the tubes in here, and everything is automated. It's like hands-off.
So this is the state-of-the-art technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Then the results are transmitted to the main computer system, to both the file of the unit and the file of the donor. Mm-hmm. So here you can see they're waiting for their turn, and once they can go on, they'll go in.
The center handles more than blood. They also handle plasma. Plasma is used to increase volume when someone has lost a lot of blood. It is stored frozen. It's cold.
Too cold, minus 30 degrees.
So cold. Running all of this requires electricity. which is why the lowest level is key to the operation. So where are we going now?
Now we are going to the -3, the most protected place in the
lowest
building,
level. So we'll be deep underground.
which will be the
So
deepest.
if the enemy of Israel were launching rockets or bombs and hit on the top, people in this building would be safe.
Absolutely.
It's like the whole building is like a bomb
The blood
shelter.
will be safe.
Yeah.
Everything that we do will be safe.
The blood would not be destroyed. The power for the whole operation is protected by enormous blast doors that are some of the largest in Israel.
In emergency, when we get an alert from the IDF, we close the blast doors.
Professor Shinar says this facility is so deep underground it can withstand a chemical attack, poison gas, or biological attack, protecting life-saving blood and plasma for a country at war. We're very deep below the ground, so
Yeah.
it's very secure. God forbid if a bomb came,
Absolutely.
this would be fine.
Yeah, and you can watch a window. We talked about windows, okay?
Yeah.
The outer window is a shelter window, which we close.
So it's secure.
Yeah, in peacetime we can open it so daylight can come in.
This is not peacetime now.
Absolutely.
No.
Presented by. On the other side of the road as well, you can see the visibility has dipped a lot. Well, now this entire matter is panning out to be worse than the last 2 to 3 years, and this is what the officials had maintained, that October was worst in the last couple of years. Now, in some pockets yesterday, the AQI in fact had reached over the 500 mark, including the Anand Vihar area, and in fact some areas including Jahangirpuri also reported AQI levels over 400 to 500. So this is a worrisome situation now. In fact, authorities have also kicked in to actually curb this situation. As of now, various measures have been implemented. The latest which has been implemented as of now by the government is that no diesel vehicles will be allowed, or diesel buses will be allowed from the adjoining state in the national capital. If the buses are electric, if the buses are CNG, or if the buses are compliant with the BS6 norms of the diesel vehicles, then only those buses will be allowed. In fact, other measures are also in place, but as of now, the situation looks very bad here in the national capital. With national capital reeling under heavy smog, there are certain pockets which are reporting AQI in the worrying category of 400 to 500. In fact, I'm coming to you from the Anand Vihar area right now, which continues to be worst affected here in the national capital. In fact, yesterday only this particular area reported an AQI level of over 500. Right now also the AQI continues to hover somewhere around 420 levels here at Anand Vihar. Every year this is said to be one of the hotspots of pollutions here in the national capital. One of the prime reasons when we talk about air pollution in the national capital continues to be the farm fires. But vehicular movement is also another aspect to it. You can see the kind of traffic this area cater to, and in fact not only traffic, but you can see the bus adda is also here at this very point. So there is a heavy vehicular movement of big vehicles, though an imposition has come into place where diesel buses from the adjoining states are not being allowed to enter to the national capital. Only electric, CNG and BS6 compliance diesel vehicles or buses will be allowed here in the national capital. In fact, there is a visual also coming in here how water guns and smoke guns are being continuously used to actually make a temporary solution of this entire situation. Though at this very pocket, in this very area, the AQI remains in the very, very poor category. In fact, it is going beyond that at some point in time. Yesterday was the day when 500 mark was breached here at Anand Vihar. In fact, Supreme Court is also taking up this issue of worsening air quality here in the national capital, where the Supreme Court has asked the 5 states, including national capital Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana and Punjab, to file an affidavit as to what measures they are taking to combat this current situation of worsening air quality here in the national capital. Well, the people of the national capital woke up to a hazy morning for the straight fifth day. Well, the air quality was already deteriorating, but now things have gone from bad to worse. In fact, today's AQI is, as when we are recording this very report, is somewhere around 336 levels, which is in the very poor category. I'm coming to you from the Kartavya Path area. On this side, you can see
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Day 26 of the war, Israel has hit a refugee camp in Gaza. Palestinians are calling it a genocide. Israel says it was a military operation to kill a Hamas commander. The response has come from Yemen now. Houthis have declared war on Israel. The IDF has deployed warships in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, countries like Bolivia have snapped diplomatic ties with Israel, and Arab Americans are building pressure on President Biden to push for a ceasefire. In Sri Lanka, the Chinese spy ship has been given a 48-hour window to conduct what Beijing calls research. We'll tell you why India and America are concerned. In Bangladesh, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina blasts Washington for sermonizing. In North Korea, they've decided to shut down at least 12 of their embassies. We'll tell you why. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is hosting the world's first ever AI safety summit. But it's getting a lot of flack. We'll discuss that too. And how did dinosaurs die? A new study is out and it blames dust. We'll tell you more about it. The headlines first. Ukraine says Russia has shelled over 100 settlements in the last 24 hours, calling it the most extensive shelling attack in the last 1 year. Kiev fears that Moscow is escalating attacks ahead of the winter. Serbia will hold snap elections on the 17th of December. This is the third time voters will head to the ballot in 3.5 years. The ruling party is under pressure over 2 mass shootings this year. French President Emmanuel Macron lands in Kazakhstan on a 2-day visit to Central Asia. He calls for strengthening partnerships. He's trying to boost France's position in a region where Russia and China are jostling for influence. Germany's president is in Tanzania asking for forgiveness for colonial crimes. Tanzania was once part of